Paul says, if you support others who preach to you, shouldn't we have an even greater right to be supported? Yet another rhetorical question with an obvious yes answer. But then Paul gets to his main point. He says at the beginning of 12, obviously we have a right to be supported. But then he says, but we have never used this right. We have a right to be supported, but we refuse to receive it. We've never used this right. We would rather put up with anything than be an obstacle to the good news about Christ. We'd rather put up with anything than be a hindrance or an obstacle to the gospel message. Paul had the right to receive support from the church, but he had a reason to refuse receiving it. The point is this, is that his right didn't dictate his actions. His love for the church dictated his actions. And in this situation, at this time and place in Corinth, if he would have exercised his right to receive support from the church, it would have been a very wrong thing to do, because he would have been associated with the false apostles and the false teachers who were working the city of Corinth in order to get money. And so Paul says, listen, I have a right to this, but for your good, I won't do it. I refuse to do it, not because I don't need to eat, but because it would cause you to stumble, because you would lump me in with those people. We as Christians are called to give up our right if there is any chance at all that it would cause someone else to stumble or be a hindrance to someone else either receiving Christ or being encouraged or growing in Christ. That's what Paul is getting at. We are called to give up our rights for the sake of the gospel. 2 Corinthians 11, 7 and 8 says this to the Corinthians. Verse 7 says, was I wrong when I humbled myself and honored you by preaching God's good news to you without expecting anything in return? And then look at verse 8. I robbed other churches. Wow. I robbed other churches by accepting their contributions so I could serve you at no cost. You see it? He's referring to the Philippian church, by the way, that was supporting him while he was serving the Corinthian church. And Paul's saying, listen, I robbed them. They supported me so I could minister to them, but instead of ministering to them, I had to minister to you. And because you were so important, to God, I couldn't have you support me, so I robbed that church to minister to you. So it's not that Paul refused support from churches. He didn't. Well, he would work when he needed to, and apparently he worked some in Corinth also as a tent maker. But when he's in full-time ministry, he's being supported by the church, just maybe not the one he's planting. The point is, Paul says, not here. In Corinth, I can't take a penny. There's a situation here that would cause the church to stumble if I received any money because it would associate Paul with the false apostles who were after the church's money. Do you see the point? This is the real point, is Paul says, yeah, of course I have a right to be supported, but I'm looking at the people that I'm serving, and I'm saying, you know what, even though I have a right, it's not in their best interest, so I won't do it. I won't touch it, because it would be wrong for me to do, even though it were my right. Do you see the example for our own lives there? Can you apply that to your life, to some place where you would say, I have a right to do this, but for the sake of the gospel and for the sake of Jesus Christ in this person's life, I won't. I won't exercise my right in this situation because it would be wrong. That's what the subject is. It's not about really pastors getting paid. It's about us giving up our rights in any situation that might cause someone else to stumble or might be a roadblock to someone else reaching Christ.